Mornings at Sparks always started the same way. I woke up at 60:30, no alarm needed, a habit carved over decades of work. Today was no different. The soft morning light slipped through clean cotton curtains, the ones I change every spring. At 78, my joints carried a slight stiffness, but I kept myself in good shape. Daily exercise, walks with my beagle Chester, and proper nutrition. Those were my secrets. Winifred Huxley was always a stickler for discipline and order. My house on Willow Street greeted me with familiar sounds: the quiet ticking of the living room clock, the gentle hum of the refrigerator. Built in the 70s, the house wasn't new, but I kept it immaculate. Polished wood floors gleamed, and the simple, high-quality furniture, decades old but well-maintained, stood as a testament to care. I slipped on my favorite blue cotton robe and headed to the kitchen, pausing to pet Chester, my elderly beagle, already waiting for breakfast. "Good morning, buddy," I said, and his tail wagged happily. The kitchen, with its classic white cabinets and neat tile floor, was the heart of my home. Little had changed over the years: the same oak table, the same comfortable chairs, the same collection of china cups Herbert and I used for coffee every morning during our 43 years of marriage. I turned on the coffee maker, a quality, no frills model, and pulled out the bills, neatly folded in a folder. Accounting pedantry is second nature, even in retirement. My gaze drifted to a photograph on the wall. Herbert, my husband, smiling beside his truck, his blue eyes still brimming with love. 15 years had passed since a heart attack took him on the highway between Salt Lake City and home. He was only 63. "Miss you, old bear?" I whispered, as I did every morning. Coffee filled the kitchen with its familiar aroma. I sat at the table, reviewing the bills, numbers adding up effortlessly in my mind. Electricity, water, phone, insurance, all within budget as always. Not because I couldn't afford more, but because I didn't see the need. Herbert and I came from working class roots. Through hard work and frugality, we lived decently. He drove trucks long haul, I was an accountant for Horizon Insurance. Modest salaries, but stable. We saved a little from every paycheck, invested in safe stocks on a colleague's advice. "We're ants, Vinny, not grasshoppers," Herbert would say with a wink. Wisdom, he'd add, is knowing when to stop procrastinating and start enjoying. That time to enjoy never came for Herbert, but his foresight proved prophetic. By his death, our investments had grown substantially. The insurance payout from the moving company was significant too. Combined with my pension and dividends, I became a wealthy woman, wealthier than anyone in Sparks would have guessed. Winifred Huxley, in simple but quality clothes, with a neat haircut and weekly manicure I did myself, was wealthier than most in this town. An irony that made me smile quietly at times. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Doris from the pharmacy. "Your prescription's ready, Mrs. Huxley," she said cheerfully. I thanked her, marked the trip in my day planner, and noted my reliable 5-year-old Toyota Camry was due for a checkup. Not flashy, but it suited me perfectly. Outside, Sparks was waking up. A boy biked to school. The Martinez couple jogged by, and the town hummed with its familiar rhythm. A working town where people knew each other's names. "That's what it's all about, isn't it, Chester?" I said, pouring food into his bowl. "We belong here. Our roots are here." My son Lil didn't see it that way. He left Sparks as soon as he could. College in Reno, a career as a tax consultant, married to Tivia, a woman with ambition as cold as Mount Whitney. They moved to an upscale Reno neighborhood, had 2 children, my grandchildren, whom I saw mostly in photos and holiday video calls. I didn't blame Lel for wanting more. That's what Herbert and I worked for, so he wouldn't have to count pennies like we did. But somewhere along the way, he lost respect for the simple things: honest labor, a modest life. He began looking at my cozy home with condescension, as if I were a failure who couldn't do better. "Mom, why don't you move to something more modern?" he'd say on rare visits. Tivia's glances screamed disappointment, as if she expected poverty to justify her infrequent visits. "Your place is nice," she'd say, her tone implying otherwise. I opened the mahogany secretary, an heirloom from my mother, and pulled out a folder of financial documents. Behind those simple numbers lay a fortune that would shock anyone who saw me as a modest pensioner. It started with the 5,000s Niles and Herbert, and I saved for this house's down payment, then grew through careful stock investments. When Lel's college scholarship freed up his education fund, that went into the portfolio too. Herbert's insurance payout and retirement savings added more. I wasn't greedy. I traveled modestly, donated anonymously through a trust fund, bought quality things that lasted. Practical, rational, valuing substance over appearances, that was me. Today was book club day at the library. I changed into elegant pants and a blouse, slipped on pearl earrings, Herbert's gift for our 20th anniversary, and headed out. But my mind was elsewhere. A month ago, I'd bought a $5 million mansion in Lakeridge, Reno's most prestigious neighborhood. Not out of spite or to impress, but because it was time for a change. My friend Eleanor's death from cancer 3 months ago shook me. "Don't put life on hold, Vinny," she'd said. "Our later is shorter than we think." Her words echoed as I decided to embrace this new chapter. The mansion wasn't just a purchase. It was a symbol: spacious rooms, a garden for roses, a kitchen to host guests, rooms for my grandchildren if they ever visited. The phone rang. It was Lel. "Mom, how are you?" he asked. "I'm fine, son," I replied calmly, heading to the library. He said he and Tavia might stop by Saturday for lunch. I smiled. They never just stopped by. Something was up. Likely about the land I'd inherited from my parents. It didn't matter. A lot would change in a few days. Saturday arrived. I baked an apple pie, my mother's recipe. Lel's childhood favorite. The clock struck 2, but their Audi didn't pull up until nearly 3. Tavia stepped out in a pristine white pantsuit. Lel in a light blue shirt and designer jeans. They brought wine and cheese, Tavia handing me the bag with a dry smile. "I hope you have decent glasses," she said. I bit back a retort. Decent glasses? As if I drank from tin cans. We settled in the living room. Tension hung in the air. Lel started. "We wanted to discuss your future." "Mom." I poured tea, watching them. "My future?" I asked. "They suggested I move to a senior community, sell my house to fund it." Then came the real reason. A development company offered $800,000 for my parents' land to build a shopping center. They wanted me to sell and invest in the project as minority partners. I almost laughed. That land was worth at least $1.5 million. "You think that's a good deal?" I asked. Tavia scoffed. "You hardly leave the house. How would you know real estate prices?" I leaned back. "I'm not selling the land, and I'm not moving to a nursing home." Lel's frustration boiled over. "You're living in this dump because you're a beggar," he snapped. "Saving every dime, denying yourself everything. Where's that gotten you? A miserable existence in this wreck." The room fell silent. Tavia stared, shocked. Chester whimpered under the table. I expected anger, but instead I felt relief. The masks were off. "Are you done?" I asked calmly. I walked to the secretary, pulled out an envelope, and handed Lil glossy photos. "My new house," I said. "I'm moving tomorrow." Tavia's eyes widened. "That's the mansion in Lakean! Yes!" I nodded. "Paid in full. No haggling." Lel stammered. "Where did you get that kind of money?" "Your father and I invested wisely," I said. "I have a lot more than that." They were stunned. "Why live so modestly if you could afford more?" Lel asked. "Because money wasn't the goal," I replied. "It was security, independence. This house, where you were born, suited me. Why change what works?" Tavia's voice softened. "We thought you were barely making ends meet." "You saw what you wanted to see," I said. "You never asked." I didn't expect apologies, but I hoped they'd see me differently. They left in silence, Lel lost, Tavia hurrying to the car. The next morning, the movers arrived. I walked through my old house one last time, memories flooding back. Lil's first steps, Christmas trees, evenings with Herbert. "Goodbye, old friend," I whispered, locking the door. The drive to Lakeridge was a journey to a new life. My mansion awaited, sunlight streaming through large windows, marble floors gleaming. Chester sniffed the new space cautiously. The movers unloaded and my realtor, Cassidy, greeted me with flowers. "Welcome home, Mrs. Huxley." That evening, I stood on the terrace, watching the sun set over the lake. Chester nuzzled my hand. "We're gonna love it here," I told him. The first month flew by. I joined a book club, made friends with neighbors like Olivia and Walter, a retired professor who invited me to concerts. Life felt full, meaningful. Lel and Tavia visited again, uninvited, with a new pitch invest 10 million in their development project for a 20% stake. I listened, unsurprised. They hadn't asked about my life, my home, or Chester, just my money. You didn't even ask how I felt in my new home, I said. I'm not an ATM. Tavia's temper flared. You're still a cheapskate, even with millions. Lel tried to smooth things over, but I asked them to leave. The next day, I met with my lawyer Archibald to finalize my will. Lel and his children would get the Laketage house and 1 million. Enough for comfort, not idleness. Smaller sums went to my Sparks neighbors, Maria and George. The rest, with 20 million, would fund the Winifred and Herbert Huxley Foundation, supporting education, the elderly, and medical research. This is a wonderful plan, Archibald said. Your legacy will live on. A week later, a letter from Lel arrived, sincere, apologetic, asking to rebuild our relationship on my terms. I didn't respond immediately. Trust would take time. My life in Lakeage grew richer daily. Book club discussions, walks with Walter, charity work, and concerts filled my days. To my neighbors, I was just Winifred, a retired woman enjoying her golden years, not a millionaire. One evening, on the terrace with Walter, watching the sunset, he raised his glass. To new beginnings, he said. I clinked my glass against his, smiling. At 78, I discovered life could still be full of meaning, relationships, and possibilities. The money Herbert and I saved wasn't just a safety net. It was a tool for good, a legacy of hard work, modesty, and care for others. Chester slept at my feet. Content in our new home. I was no longer just Lel's mother or Herbert's widow. I was Winifred Huxley, free to be myself. And isn't that what true richness is all about?